Okay, we are now streaming live. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 2023 Board of Education meeting. I'd like to start us off in a good way by recognizing and acknowledging both the Esquimalt and Songhees nations on whose traditional territories we live, we learn, and we do our work. May I have a mover to approve the agenda? Thank you, Trustee Bayo, and a seconder, Trustee Kwan. Thank you. Any changes or amendments to our agenda this evening? Hearing none, all those in favor of the agenda? And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. We have two sets of minutes for approval under A3. The first is from May 31st. It was a special open board meeting. May I have a mover for the May 31st minutes, please? Thank you, Trustee Mabobi, and a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Any changes or amendments to those minutes? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the May 31st minutes with a show of hands, please. And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. Moving on to the June 19th regular board minutes. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Mabobi, and a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Any changes or amendments to those minutes? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the June 19th minutes. And again, that is unanimous. Thanks. All right, so the next item on our agenda is business arising from the minutes. So any business arising from either set of minutes, folks? Okay, so that moves us to A5 of our agenda. This is the 2022-2023 audit findings report. Lenora Lee from KPMG, our internal auditors, our external auditors rather, is here. I'd like to welcome Lenora Lee. Nice to see you again, and the floor is yours when you're ready.
Great, thank you for having me at your meeting tonight. I'll just share my screen a moment here and take you through a couple of the highlights of the audit findings report, which is included in tonight's package. Overall, in terms of the financial statements, our role is to provide an opinion on their accuracy and completeness in accordance with the public sector accounting standards, along with Treasury Board regulations, which are the rules that the ministry requires the school district to follow. We have substantially completed our audit work, and we met with the audit committee last week to review this report in detail, as well as to discuss any comments and questions that arose from it. So I won't go through in as much detail as last week, but happy to answer any questions that you may have related to it. In terms of the overall status of our audit, we are substantially complete. The only items that remain are approval of the financial statements tonight and receipt of the management representation letter, which is simply the correspondence we obtain from management that indicates the financial statements are complete and that we have received all the information we need to in order to complete our audit. We do also confirm annually our auditor's independence, that there are no other services that were provided that would impair our independence to provide an independent audit report. In terms of the audit opinion, as drafted, it is a clean and unqualified audit report. And what that means is that there's no reservations or qualifications attached to it. It indicates the financial statements present fairly in accordance with the rules the school district is required to follow, and that there are no material errors. There's two important items that are noted in the audit report, which are consistent with both previous years, as well as with all other school districts in the province. The first is the accounting framework, or the accounting rules that the school district follows, are those specifically required by the province. And the second is that there was a new accounting standard adopted in the current year related to asset retirement obligations. And I'll give a couple highlights of what that impact was shortly, but that is referenced in the audit report just to indicate it was a new rule that was applied in the current year financial statements. And as a result, the 2022 comparative numbers were also updated to be presented on a similar basis to the current year, 2023. The next few sections I'll just touch on very briefly. They provide a summary of our areas of focus with respect to the audit procedures. These were consistent with our audit plan, and there was no modifications to our audit plan, no obstacles that we had come across that required us to modify the procedures as planned. The first that's required in all audits is to perform audit procedures over fraud risk, specifically related to management override of controls. And what that means is that in the preparation of the financial statements, outside of the day-to-day operating controls, management is in a position to be able to record year-end entries or manual entries into the financial statements. Our audit focuses on those types of entries to ensure that we are comfortable that they are sound and are consistent with our understanding of the business. If there are particular estimates or judgments involved, that those are consistent also with our understanding of the business. In that regard, there was no issues noted to bring to the attention of the board. The next couple areas of focus relate to the capital fund. So these items don't impact the day-to-day operating fund, but are contained within the capital assets as well as capital funding of the school district. This page here just provides a bit more information around that new accounting standard that was adopted related to asset retirement obligations. As mentioned in previous years, the result of this new standard was an earlier recognition of costs related to remediating buildings for materials such as asbestos, where there are rules in place for how those materials should be removed, as well as additional costs that are required in order to remove them in a legislative and required manner. Overall, the school district evaluated the cost of remediating its buildings and recognized a liability of an estimated $22 million. So that represents costs that will be incurred and funded at some point in the future, but exists today as a future cost that will be needed to be paid. We performed work over this, including reviewing the detailed estimates and process management went through to determine that estimate, and we are comfortable that that is a reasonable number to be recorded within the financial statements. Again, that was contained to only the capital fund and does not impact the rest of the operating fund of the financial statements or the school district. The next area relates to the capital assets. So this is the regular capital renewal, renovations, seismic upgrades that take place. About 45 million was incurred this year in capital additions. And our work consists of things such as reviewing the financial statements against payments that were actually made, as well as invoices from the construction companies and contractors. We also confirm with the ministry directly any capital grant money that was received in order to fund and pay for those capital assets. In that area, we had not noted any audit differences. The next few pages speak to the operating fund. This relates to salaries and benefits in both operations and special purpose, revenue, as well as the other day-to-day expenses that are incurred. In each of these areas, our audit procedures consist of things such as reviewing actuals to budget, as well as actuals to prior year. We also perform a number of confirmations, so direct communication with third parties to verify certain numbers in the financial statements. Those include things such as employee future benefit obligations. Those are items such as sick leave, as well as retirement payment estimates. As well, we confirm amounts of operating grants received from the province during the course of the year. And again, in each of those areas, salaries and benefits, revenue, and other expenses and payables, there was no audit adjustments that we recommended. And then the last area of focus was related to school-generated funds. So these were not necessarily a material account to the financial statements, but because the day-to-day oversight of them does take place at the school level with more limited oversight by the school board office, it is an area that we review each year to understand the review procedures that were taking place by the finance team, as well as the amounts that are recorded in both cash as well as deferred revenue. We did review the work that the school board office finance team performed and had not noted any adjustment needed to either our risk assessment or to the values that were reported in the financial statements. Just one note here that we did apply a new audit standard this year, which was a modernization of the auditor's requirement to review risk assessment. That resulted in a deeper dive into some of the processes in place around financial reporting as well as day-to-day financial activities. And so we did apply that standard in the current year. One control observation that was noted that was consistent with all school districts is related to asset retirement obligations. And management already has this area well in hand, and decisions being made around how to maintain this estimate in the future. So now that a preliminary value has been evaluated and recorded in the statements, it now also requires periodic updating each year. So as remediation activities take place, the liability will decrease. And as new items are either detected or new legislation comes into place that requires removal of other contaminants in a particular way, the value may increase. Overall, we did not identify any significant or material control deficiencies that would suscept the school district to significant risk that an error would be undetected. Overall, the appendices provide you with a little bit more information as to upcoming changes to accounting standards that we'll continue to work with management on, as well as some thought leadership and insight items as to common topics that we have been discussing with either boards or audit committees that may be of interest to you. Matters such as risk management as well as ESG that may be common topics amongst this board table or others that you're involved in. Lastly, I would comment that the audit process was, as in previous years, a very clean and smooth process. In this audit, we had not identified any corrected or uncorrected audit adjustments. And so the preliminary first draft of the financial statements that we received were the same numbers as what was presented in tonight's package. And that should provide the board with a high level of confidence that the numbers that you do receive and review during the course of the year are accurate and have a very detailed level of rigor in place by the finance team as well. Lastly, I would like to thank the finance team and management for all of their assistance with the audit. The audit went very well. On time, we received the full support and very easy and open access to all members of the team. So very much would like to thank everyone for their assistance. I'm happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time this evening and presenting your findings to the board. Really heartening to hear that it was such a clean process, and that certainly does give us added reassurance. So thanks for sharing that. Trustees, or anyone else for that matter that has questions for Lenora while she's here with us. Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Sorry, and it's actually more of a comment. I hope that's okay than a question. Thank you, Lenora and Aomidi for all of your work on this. Really do appreciate it. Want to say, I said it in the audit committee meeting, but I want to say it in public. Thank you to Katrina and your team. Congratulations on a very clean audit. Julie, that includes you, and Hervinda too. I just wanted to point out in Appendix 4, the thought leadership and insights and current trends in internal audit. And, there's some really great ideas there that I think would be useful for the board to look at in the coming years of some things that might be implemented in our district. So just thought I'd point that out if anyone wants to take a second look at some of those. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Trustee Quant. Yeah, no, fantastic. Glad to see the beginnings of some more thinking around environmental accounting and cybersecurity risks and so on. So yeah, thank you so much again. Anybody else have any questions for Lenora? Okay, well, thank you again. We really appreciate your time this evening. Thanks for being here in person to present your findings.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay, folks, so the next item on our agenda is under 8.8, and we have one community presentation this evening. I'd like to welcome Ruth Curry. Ruth is coming to us from the Friends of Beaucourt Creek, and she is here to discuss Oak Bay Secondary Soccer Field and some issues around the turf. Ruth, welcome. Thanks so much for being here tonight. When you're ready, the floor is yours. I don't know if you've been here before to present, but you have 5 minutes. I do time, folks, and I'll let you know when you have a minute left. So pardon my interruption in advance, but whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and trustees. My name is Ruth Curry, and tonight I wish to speak on behalf of the Friends of Beaucourt Creek, who work in the Beaucourt Creek watershed to maintain and improve the health of the creek, and board of the Friends organization. Earlier this month, the Friends of Beaucourt Creek were alerted to large amounts of artificial turf field infill escaping in both clumps and particles onto paths and roadways adjacent to the Oak Bay Secondary Soccer Field. By the time we visited the site, these materials had spread down the grassy embankment of the creek and onto both the upper and lower parking lots of the Oak Bay Recreation Center. A small work party was convened, and in less than 2 hours of sweeping and hand picking, we had collected over 60 pounds of turf infill materials, which did not include flattened clumps that had been tracked on shoes and tires throughout the B Street area. For your reference, I don't know if I'm holding up a typical piece of the material that was found on the site. Another member of our board contacted the head of facility services to inquire about the escape of these materials and express the urgency of containing them before they entered the creek and posed a threat to wildlife in and around the creek and to the water quality. A reply from that office outlined current actions that were intended to mitigate the escape of materials, namely having a cleaning crew collect material once a week, the installation of a vinyl curtain on the fence to keep material from washing into the creek, and installation of protection in the storm drains. In the opinion of facility services, the problem with heat-induced clumping of infill would diminish as the weather cooled. During our site visit, it became obvious that not only did these mitigation attempts utterly fail to contain materials, but we believe the onset of the cooler weather and the rain that we are now experiencing will have the effect of increasing the toxic load of materials into the creek and not reducing it. Additionally, only one of many nearby storm drains had been fitted with landscape cloth to collect debris, and infill was clearly washing into all the others on pathways and parking lots. Along with these issues, there are, of course, still the less visible but long-standing problems of toxic off-gassing of material and the CO2 release from artificial fields, not to mention the heat retained by such fields in the warmer months. It's the responsibility of an organization that experiences a toxic spill such as this to report that event to the BC Ministry of the Environment and or the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and we would ask that the school district confirm that such action has been taken. As you are aware, this is not the first instance of infill material escaping from the field into the surrounding area and the creek. And this second instance, which would appear to be far more extensive and insidious than the first, has occurred only 3 years after the original field failed and was replaced by the manufacturer. It's shocking to see the degradation of the field after such a short time, and of course, replacing the field and shipping degraded materials off to a distant stockpile facility does not resolve the issue. It merely relocates it. As you may be aware, School District 61 has signed onto the Beaucourt Creek Blueprint, a document outlining a 100-year plan to restore the creek and improve the health of the watershed. It's frustrating and demoralizing that to date, the experience with the turf field at Oak Bay Secondary has been undermining the goals of the blueprint and its water quality objectives. It's unacceptable, even in the short term, for turf infill materials to be allowed to enter a fish-bearing stream and travel downstream to the Salish Sea, where they add to the load of micro and macro plastics in our ocean waters. The Friends of Boca Creek acknowledge the importance of usable playing fields in a time of increasing demand and would like to work with the school district, Oak Bay Public Works, and user groups in finding an immediate solution for preventing this infiltration and to protect the health of the creek and its inhabitants.
Ruth, you have 50 seconds left.
Thank you. Taking some positive steps to resolve this unfortunate situation provides a valuable learning opportunity for all and would set a good stewardship example for Oak Bay secondary students. For the longer term, we feel we must question the compatibility of artificial turf fields, certainly in close proximity to any watercourses or storm drain systems to watercourses, both in Oak Bay and further afield. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to make this presentation tonight.
Thank you very much, Ruth. I'm sorry that you're joining us under these circumstances, but we're really grateful for you presenting to us tonight. You're not obliged to answer any questions, but if you would like to, I can open the floor up to questions that folks might have for you.
I'll answer whatever I can.
Okay, fair enough. All right, folks, do we have any questions for Ruth? Yep, Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Not so much a question, just first of all, thank you again for coming and presenting to us. And, I think we're all concerned for the same reason. And, it's definitely been on our mind and something that, I think we really needs to be addressed, and I think is being addressed. So, I absolutely, it's great that you're here, and we love to hear from you, and we don't want this to be the end. We definitely want to continue hearing from you. So yeah, absolutely. Let's keep the conversation going and keep looking at what's happening and how we can mitigate what's happening as well. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. We would prefer it to be an ongoing conversation as well. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Ruth. Just to clarify, the advice in terms of other mitigations that you feel would be warranted given the situation, I assume that those have already been communicated to district staff?
No, we feel it probably would involve a site visit to just do some brainstorming, because in particular, the curbing hasn't been installed, and the curtaining on the fence is not really effective. The material just flows right underneath it. So I think we're going to have to come up with some creative thinking here.
All right, thanks very much. All right, folks, thanks again to Ruth. Really appreciate your time. Yeah, we look forward to ongoing discussions around this. Trustees, I'm going to move us on in our agenda. We are under B, correspondence. We have correspondence at B1 to B7. Wondering if trustees would like to pull any particular correspondence for discussion. Okay, I might just, if you'll allow me then, pull B4. So this is a reply letter from the Minister of Education, the Honourable Minister Singh, to our board's request for additional funding and supports. It's at page 57 of the pack-up. I wanted to just highlight a couple of aspects of that letter. One, Minister indicates that they are gathering information on inflationary pressures in the K-12 sector, and that discussions are ongoing as to the extent of the impact on operations and how it might be addressed. So that's an important point that was shared. And then the minister also indicated that they were continuing to work with PSEC and BC Public School Employers Association to ensure that exempt staff salary and benefit increases are fully funded beyond the 2023-24 school year. So just wanted to highlight that for the board. Any other letters that folks want to pull for discussion? Okay, so just bear with me a second. Next item on our agenda, then, if there's nothing else from correspondence, it's there for your information. The next item on our agenda is the chair's report. So just bear with me a second. So you've got my report at C1A. Before I get started, I just wanted to say a few words on behalf of the board in relation to the protests and counter protests this past week. It is clear to me that there has been significant struggles to have open and respectful dialogue with one another with the aim of gaining greater insight into what the SOGI curriculum includes and how age-appropriate learning resources support classroom learning. I would ask each member of our learning community to commit to reading through the facts available at sogieeducation.org, and where there are questions, to enter into respectful dialogue. Our priority is to uphold safe, welcoming, and inclusive school communities where all learners can grow and learn and be accepted for the unique people they are. Creating safe, welcoming, and inclusive learning environments is a joint responsibility for all staff, students, and families that make up our learning community. No one in our learning community should be subject to discrimination. Through open and respectful dialogue, we can gain greater appreciation of one another and for the value of diversity. To support our fundamental obligation to uphold the rights set out in the Human Rights Code, we must commit to following our policies and regulations on gender identity and gender expression, 4305, and on discrimination, 4303. So I appreciate your attention in relation to that, and I look forward to an ongoing dialogue. In terms of my board report, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. You've got it there in the packet for information, but I wanted to pause and just acknowledge the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on the 30th of September. Very important day of remembrance to acknowledge and to honor the children who never made it home and survivors of residential schools, as well as their families and communities. It's a day to continue learning about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action and our roles and responsibilities towards truth and reconciliation as members of our learning community. The day is part of a larger national conversation about the history of colonization and the ongoing impacts of systemic inequalities, including in education, that continue to marginalize Indigenous peoples in Canada. So I know we're going to commemorate the day on the 2nd of October. So just would encourage everybody to take advantage of that time to really think about your roles and responsibilities and the position that we're all in to move good intention into action in the coming school year. The other reminder I'd like to highlight from the report is the deadline for expressing interest and participating in our school district's accessibility advisory group. The deadline is the 30th of September. There is a link in the pack-up in my report on page 66 to the actual application and some instructions for how to apply. So just want to encourage everybody that has an interest in that work to observe that deadline of September 30th. The only other thing I wanted to just highlight is that Public Interest Disclosure Act. So that act is going to come into force for all school districts on December 1st of this year. We have a policy 8400, the whistleblower protection policy, and there's a link again in the report to that for further information, and I would encourage you to have a look. Next, under board chair's report, you'll also note that we have included a letter from the minister that was received by myself on behalf of the board. This relates to the ministry's work with the BCSTA to develop a criteria and some guidelines for school districts who are looking to update their school trustee codes of conduct. So in the pack-up, starting on page 67, the letter that I received from the minister is included. The points and the guidance also follows. So just really wanting to update everybody on the status of that work. It's something that we'll be working on at the policy committee level and then bringing to the board for consideration. There are a number of areas that we will be looking at to update. So stay tuned and have a read through. It's a good guidance document, and it'll certainly be helpful as we contemplate potential improvements and amendments to our trustee codes of conduct. Any questions that you have about that so far? Okay, and then the only other thing moving down is the boards, or we're calling it the district work plan. I'm having some discussions with the superintendent about our work plan, just looking to identify other things that we can include in the work plan that might sort of assist in our planning. So you'll see a slightly revised work plan. There's a calendar, and we're trying to highlight significant dates so that folks know when the board is doing what work, hopefully to help in scheduling and planning. And then the next item I wanted to highlight was a letter that I wrote on behalf of the board. This is at page 83 of the pack-up. And this is a letter to the Honorable Minister Singh, Minister of Education and Childcare, and then also to the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General, Honorable Mike Farnsworth. This was about research into SPLO program impacts. This arose from a board motion in May. And so we were writing to the ministers to ask them to immediately commission research into the impacts of SPLO programs on K-12 students in British Columbia. That letter is there for your information. Any questions? And again, any questions doesn't have to be from trustees. If any of our rights holders or partners around the table have questions, I'm happy to take those. Hi, go ahead, Tracy. Welcome. Nice to see you.
Surprising. I'm sorry I was late tonight. I apologize to everybody for that. And yes, I always have questions, but this is legitimately from the membership. And you wrote about having spent time over the summer to look into how to manage what might be the gaps coming out of not having the SPLO programs anymore. And I wondered if there was more details about that would be coming so that we can, really let PACs know, like, these are the specific things that we're looking at, and these are the ways that we will address them.
Yeah, so I guess, first of all, what I would say is that in our welcome back letter, the superintendent and I spoke to the work that the board and the superintendent did over the summer. We are confident that there are no gaps and that we've identified service provision is in place. But we certainly could look to a further information about some of the work that we did. Happy to engage in some discussions with the superintendent and the board in relation to that. Superintendent Whitten, did you have anything you wanted to add in terms of President Humphrey's question?
I can share that we are continuing to have conversations with principals and vice principals about things that they see in their schools around services and supports, and we'll continue that in October as we look at the school startup and recognizing when in the past school police liaison officers would have been called, who is called now, or what supports or gaps that they may be experiencing.
The only thing I would add, Tracy, is that the existing protocols are still active. So around lockdowns and the like, those protocols are still in place and still apply. Yeah, go ahead. Did you have a follow-up question?
I do, thank you. Just really an invitation, because I had intended to invite both the chair and the superintendent to come to our meetings this year, and I haven't extended sort of a formal invitation yet, just, many things going on, but it would be great if maybe you could come and, speak to that a little bit at the next meeting if you're available, because I think that would be helpful. Then there could be a little dialogue about it if there's any more questions.
Yeah, no, thanks for the invitation. I'd be pleased to attend. Would you mind just sending me the dates and
You bet.
yeah, would be lovely. Thanks.
Okay.
All right, folks. Any other questions in relation to the chair's report this month? Trustee Painter, go ahead.
Just on the point of our National Day of Truth and Reconciliation this Saturday, I just wanted to mention that the Songhees Nation, one of our valued educational partners, is sponsoring the second now South Island Powwow on September 30th at Royal Athletic Park. Starts at 10 a.m. A lot of the people on the screen I see here were there last year. I loved it. I'm sure a lot of other people got a lot of value out of it as well. So just wanted to throw in a plug.
Thank you, Trustee Painter. Appreciate you sharing that. Okay, folks, if there are no other questions about the chair's report this month, I'm going to move us on to trustee reports. We don't have any, although I appreciate Trustee Painter sharing that information. Under D, board committee reports, we start with our Education Policy and Directions Committee. At D1A, we have draft minutes for information only. And then at B, we have a number of recommended motions for this evening. So I'm wondering if we want to move these motions together or sever anything in particular. Trustees, do we want to move them as a group or sever them? All right, I'm going to suggest we move them in as a group if I'm not hearing anything otherwise. So what I'll do is I'll just read them into the record for clarity. So the first motion is that the Board of Education of School District Number 61 Greater Victoria approve new policy 5150, sanctuary schools. The second motion is that the Board of Education of School District Number 61 Greater Victoria approve new regulation 5150, sanctuary schools at the September 25th, 2023 Board of Education meeting. The third motion is that the Board of Education of School District Number 61 Greater Victoria amend draft new policy, International Education Student Enrollment 3.0 policy. And then we have 3.7. The Board of Education directs that prior to considering international student enrollment, schools must make every reasonable effort to confirm that there is adequate space, educational programs, and instructional support available for school-aged children resident in the school district. The next recommended motion that the Board of Education of School District Number 61 Greater Victoria amend draft new policy, International Student Enrollment 3.0 policy at 3.3. The Board of Education acknowledges that marketing and recruiting activities are carried out to attract international students to the school district as described in the supporting regulation. Next motion that the Board of Education of School District Number 61 Greater Victoria refer the draft policy International Education Enrollment and draft regulation International Education Enrollment with the relevant additional data to the Education Policy and Directions Committee meeting October 16th, 2023. And finally, that the Board of Education of School District Number 61 Greater Victoria direct the policy subcommittee to review policy 5123 student placement. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Mabobi, and a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the recommended motions coming from Education Policy and Directions. And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. All right, that moves us on to D2, which is the Operations Policy and Planning Committee. At A, you'll see again the draft minutes for information only. At B, we have a number of recommended motions coming from the September meeting. Wondering if, well, there's two this month. I'm wondering if we want to sever anything. Okay, so we'll maybe move those then as a group. We have two recommended motions. So I just want to pause for a second, just to confirm so that we want to move those as a group. Okay, So the two recommended motions then that will move as a group are the following: that the Board of Education School District number 61 Greater Victoria direct the policy subcommittee to review draft administrative regulations 1161.2 privacy management program, 1161.3 privacy impact assessments, and 1161.4 critical incident and privacy breach. And the second recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School Districts number 61 Greater Victoria adopt the draft climate action plan and annually review progress toward implementation of the climate action plan. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Gagnon, and a seconder, Trustee Mabobi. Any discussion, trustees? Before we vote, I just want to just acknowledge all the efforts over the last 10 months in particular of staff and rights holder stakeholders that were involved in the work of the climate action committee. There was a lot that went into it, and we even had our information technology folks get involved in helping us with the draft that's before you this evening. So it's definitely a living document. It's something we're going to review on an annual basis, and to ensure that we're implementing it in all the ways that we wish to, and that we intend to. This is just the first step, really, of implementation. So thank you again to everybody that participated over the last 10 months. We've made huge strides forward, so it's pretty exciting. Trustee Gagnon, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I didn't hear myself come off mute. Yes, just to echo what you said, with special emphasis for Brian Leslie and District Principal Sean Powell for the work they did. This was not anywhere near a document as much as 10 months ago. So to go from the pillars that were included in this document to really flesh it out, to really come together with a lot of conversation and teamwork and really trust in each other. Really proud to be part of the effort. So thank you to everyone who was involved. And yes, particular shout out to Brian and Sean just for their work and really putting the fingers to the keys and getting this thing done. So thank you again.
Yeah, our wonderful drafters. Wonderful. Thanks, Trustee Gagnon. Appreciate it. All right, folks. Would anyone else like to speak to the motions, the recommended motions, before I call the vote? Okay. All right. All those in favor of the recommended motions from the September ops, with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you again, folks. All right, so we're moving on to D3. This is our audit subcommittee report. We have a number of recommended motions coming out of the audit subcommittee. I'm going to turn things over first to, I don't know if it's Secretary Treasurer, are you going to present the report for the audit committee tonight?
Trustee Painter and I discussed, and Trustee Painter is taking the lead on this one as the chair.
Got it. All right, so Chair Painter, the floor is yours when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Chair Duncan. A lot of these chairs things going around. So we have a number of motions coming out of the audit subcommittee report. The first of these is that, well, and Chair, would you like me to, I guess I'll begin by asking if there are any that people would like to see severed. Otherwise, I'll read them all out at once and we'll carry on.
Sure.
Or would you like me to introduce them all? What is your preference?
I just wondered if we might have a little bit more discussion about the multi-year financial plan, just Certainly. What the intentions and timelines are, but otherwise I'm happy to see them moved as a group.
Okay, I will pull that one out, but I'll go ahead and read the other motions. And actually two editorial comments. One is that the third recommended motion, the financial statement discussion and analysis report, and it begins on page 201 of this agenda package. And I would say that it's daunting to get into the financial reports that the board works through. But I found that this was quite an articulate and thoughtful report, and presents a good number of the topics in a more accessible manner. So I would encourage people to have a look if they have not already. And the other point I wanted to raise is that for anyone who is looking for additional information on the appropriation of the operating surplus mentioned in the first motion, they can go to page 183 of the package, and it actually breaks down that monolithic 6,841,000 into its smaller components, so people can better appreciate just what went into that number. So with that in mind, I will go ahead and read the motions that we are addressing together. The first of these, that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, approve the appropriation of $6,841,658 of the operating surplus as follows. 1, internally restricted, $6,224,545, and 2, unrestricted, contingency, $617,113. The next motion, that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, approve the audited financial statements of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, for the year ended June 30th, 2023, and further that the board chair, the superintendent, and the secretary treasurer be authorized to affix their signatures to the statements, where applicable, on behalf of the board. Third, that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, approve the financial statement discussion and analysis report for the year ended June 30th, 2023. And finally, at this point, that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, approve the schedules as required by the Financial Information Act for the period July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023, and further the approved schedules be posted to the district website. Trustee Kwan?
Yeah, I was going to ask that we sever them so that we can deal with them one by one. I think before we even have a mover, there's probably some questions that trustees have. So I'm hoping that we can do that.
Certainly, and my apologies for missing your hand earlier. I was jumping between screens. So with that in mind, let's start with the first one, which is the appropriation of the operating surplus. Trustee Huan.
Yeah, I just quick question. I know you mentioned that on 183 there is a breakdown. Just wanted a little bit further information, perhaps on the addition of the 70,917 to unrestricted surplus year end, and wondered if what that makes up. Was that having to do with the spending freeze that we had in place, or other things? And was just curious as to where that. I mean, it's great news. I mean, we're $70,000 more in our contingency, which is good, but I just wondered where that was coming from.
I will refer that to the Secretary Treasurer for clarification.
Thank you. Yes, so actually what that is it's our total operating surplus minus all of those restricted items. So in our normal process, we would go through to see what sort of contractual obligations we have, if we generally carry forward certain things like grants or donations. And after all of that is done, then we see what's left over, and that's what was left over this year. So it's actually a very small amount if you compare it to our $300 million budget. The only thing we could think of to do with that is to put it back into our contingency, especially given that there were two decisions made by the board after the budget was approved that removed some money, and our contingency is smaller than it should be based on our policy.
Trustee Duncan, Chair Duncan.
Thank you. I just had a question. It's at page 182 of the backup. Paragraph 19, contingent liabilities and assets. I'm just wondering what next steps are in terms of sort of regular reporting to the board, so that we can monitor these matters and sort of set direction as needed, in order to mitigate these risks. So these were contingent liabilities and assets on page 182 of the pack-up.
All right, just taking a minute to get there. And I'm looking politely at the screen. Oh, Secretary Treasurer has unmuted, so I'm going to the Secretary Treasurer.
So I think if I'm in the right place, you're looking at note number 19. Specifically, so there's a reference to unspent classroom enhancement fund remedies. This is something that we have at the end of every year because they don't confirm funding for this until we're into the new year. So I would say there's very little risk associated with that one. The next one down is around the schedule delay with Vic High. So we do have, I think it's a estimated amount claimed is over 1.7 million. I think there is definitely some risk there of us having to pay some funds out for that, but not likely to that full amount. Those are the claims that have been made, and so we are working with legal counsel on those to mitigate costs. It's estimated that we would be able to resolve all of those claims without having to go, hopefully, to court or anything like that.
Is that?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Is that it, Trustee Duncan? Does that meet your question?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thanks, appreciate that.
Okay. So focus strictly on now trying to find my way back to that part of the agenda. Of our first motion regarding the appropriation of operating surplus, do we have any more questions before I move that motion, or before I offer that motion up to be approved? And Chair, please remind me, do I need a mover on this one since it's coming from committee?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. May I have a mover? I see Trustee Kwan and seconded by Trustee Mavovi. Any final questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is unanimous. Moving on to motion number 2, respecting the approval of the audited financial statements and the board chair, superintendent, secretary, treasurer affixing their signatures and statements. Do we have any additional questions? And I do want to be clear that our educational partners, VCPAC, GBTA, VP, VPA, you are welcome to present or to ask your questions in advance. I see no takers. Any takers from trustees? Mover, please. I'm going to give this one to Trustee Mavovi and seconded by Trustee Kwan, just in the principles of egalitarianism. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. We are on to our third motion respecting approval of the financial statement discussion and analysis report. And is that a question or a moving? Oh, question?
Yeah, question. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. I was just actually wondering, trustees and partners' thoughts on. I actually found the report easier to read than the financial statements, for one. Speaking from a parent's point of view, and probably someone who might be coming new to the budgeting process and financial process, it was really well put together, really well read, and so I wondered if in this case, if that's something that we would actually, I know we don't have it in the motion, but that we would like to post on the website as well. So that would be the only suggestion for amendment, but I'd love to hear others' thoughts before I suggest that amendment.
Like you. Oh, Superintendent, please, and Secretary Treasurer. You just appeared there in the middle. It was like an accordion.
If I may, I can just clarify that this document becomes part of our financial statements, and so it will be posted on the website as part of our statements.
Okay, that clarifies a lot. Thank you.
Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, just a question of clarification, if I may. I would echo everyone's comments about just appreciating the analysis and the report itself. Want to just query the student numbers, though. On page 203 of the pack-up, this is the district overview section of the report. We say we have 19,544 students. And then if we move down to the graphic on page 205, we indicate our student population is 20,941. Would you mind just sort of clarifying for me why there's a difference?
We actually had a discussion about this at audit committee, because you'll see different references to enrollment in different reports. The district context is actually using head count, so we're referring to the number of students, whereas the reference in the FSDNA report is referring to FTE. And I believe it's for the full year, so it would include September, February, and May.
And just for those in the audience, secondary students can actually take more than one person's worth of courses, so may end up counting as 1.1, 1.2 of an FTE. And so this can result in variations in the count. That's just one element. Any further comments, questions? May I have a mover for this? Trustee Kwan, Trustee Mwobi, I'm counting on the two of you for this whole evening. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. And since we've dealing with all of them independently, we'll now move on to the Board of Education School District number 61, Greater Victoria, approved the multi-year financial plan 2023 to 2026. And it's my understanding this is, although some districts have been working on these in the last couple of years, this is the first year that it's mandatory for all districts. So this is our first take at it, I understand, Secretary Treasurer?
That's correct.
And just for clarification, do we have a specific, in future years, we'll be looking at a specific timeline tied to approval of the budget, or just how is it going to work into our budget calendar in terms of developing this?
This will become part of our budget process. I'm not sure if you recall, towards the end of last year's budget process, we introduced the financial plan of this so that we could show the future impact of the budget decisions that were made. So this is a report that's resulted from the K-12 public education financial planning and reporting policy that the ministry brought in July 2021. So this report, and also you might recall the operating surplus policy that was approved by the board. And there's one other policy that we actually haven't done yet, and it's called the financial planning and reporting policy. So currently working on a draft of that policy, and that should outline the board's process around its financial planning and reporting, which would include the multi-year financial plan. This is the first year that the plan has been required, and the ministry recognized that not all districts will have used the multi-year financial plan as part of its financial planning for the 2023-2024 year. And but there is an expectation that we would do that for next year. So as we start doing our budget process for 24-25, that the multi-year financial plan would become a part of that. And it's really just around ensuring there's appropriate consultation and aligning financial resource allocation to the strategic plan, the enhancing student learning report, school growth plans, and operational needs. So it's sort of pulling it all together in a financial plan, so that we are making intentional decisions with our budget that are tied to the strategic plan. That's the goal of the ministry.
Thank you very much for that. Trustee Duncan.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to get some clarification on whether or not there's an opportunity to amend this this document moving forward. So we're just about to start our budget season, and I suspect that there will be some discussions that will result in recommendations that would, impact this this report in particular, this plan. So I'm wondering whether there's scope to amend this once it's submitted to the ministry in light of those discussions.
My understanding is that the feedback that I received from the ministry when I provided them with this draft is that we should try to show more alignment, like our budget allocations to the strategic plan and supporting documents, but that they could recognize that we're at a place right now where we are starting that process, and that in the future they will see that. This document isn't set in stone. So like the financial plan that is there is really a snapshot based on assumptions that were made when it was created. The budget for 23-24 that's included in the report is the annual budget. And as we already know, there have been changes since then, and we'll have a final budget that comes out after that. And we're making assumptions around wage increases into the future that we don't have negotiated collective agreements for. So there's many things that will change this plan like into the future. We will have to do another multi-year financial plan next year and do our best efforts to guess what the next 3 years will be. It's just to try to get boards to think beyond just the current fiscal year and what the impacts are in future years. So I'm not sure what it is that you would want to amend, if it's like the wording or if it's the actual financial plan itself.
Trustee Duncan, please.
Yeah, thanks. I just anticipate that through the budget development process this year, there will be areas where we do just as the ministry suggested, which is sort of align our budget allocations more directly to our strategic plan and to our commitments in the ESSL, if that's what we're calling it now. I'm always keen to have an opportunity to do that as soon as possible, rather than to have to wait until the next, financial year to update it. So I'm just wondering, really, that's where I'm coming from. I anticipate we're going to get more sophisticated in how we do this relatively quickly, because we're making, significant strides forward in that way. So just wanting to know whether we have to wait till next year to amend this document, or whether we can do it this year as part of our budget process.
So I'll defer to the Secretary Treasurer, but my understanding is that this 3-year one is going to be a rolling document moving forward. We'll always propose 3 years in advance. So it's visionary rather than a hard commitment, and is intended to get us to think more deliberately about what our expenditures are going to be in the future. So I think the point is not so much that we'll need to amend this one as much as we roll forward, our vision, our understanding is going to change slightly. So this is a point of departure as opposed to something that we necessarily need to get exactly right. Secretary Treasurer, am I off base there?
No, you're not off base at all. Just to clarify that this multi-year financial plan is about the budget process that we undertook for the 2023-2024 year. So what you're saying is how we're going to change things and improve things and better align our strategies. That will be reflected in the report that we do for next September.
Great. I'm reassured. Thank you for explaining that. Appreciate it.
President Humphreys, or is it Chair Humphreys? I can never quite keep it straight.
It's president, but it's also just Tracy. It's okay. But we want to decolonize a little bit, right? My question is just a little clarification on a few things. I just want to first say that I really appreciate some of the reports that I've seen, and the meetings this month. They're really incredible. They're a lot of work, and I can see how much effort goes into them by staff and how much information you have to pull together. So whenever I come in, I always kind of have that critical piece, right? And I just wanted to preface it with I really recognize the work, and I really feel like there's been a market improvement in how clear it is to me, not being a trustee, not being a staff. And there's a lot that I didn't understand as well. And now those reports are making it easier for me to understand. So, it's great work. But on that note, I have a couple of things I just wanted to understand a little better. And it's really just under that page where you have the alignment strategies, which I love. It's really a great piece to show me and people who aren't as, deeply engaged, how you're working towards making everything connect together. And so I guess my question was down on the equity action plans, because I know that I had been corrected to understand that, some of the equity piece really just refers to a specific piece of work that you're doing around Indigenous education. But I wondered if that removal of barriers is referring to more than just that, or if we can, I guess, just a little more clarity about what that little section means.
And is it going to be Deputy Superintendent taking that on, or is that just the way the screen shifted?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Through the chair, is that okay?
Absolutely.
I know it was very rambling, so I appreciate it. It really was that I just want a little more clarity on that section. And I'm sorry, it's page, what page is this? It's the page with the aligned strategies in the report where it says school plans, enhancing student learning report, local education agreements. And I was asking about the equity action plans section. I just wanted a little more detail about maybe what those things mean.
These did come through our Indigenous Education Department as an addition to the ESLR document and to this document as well. And really, it does apply to all areas within our system when we look at them. If we talk about removing barriers, what identifying barriers are we speaking to? And I think we can address many on that level. Looking at our practices and policies that we've put in place, are we following those, and do they support our equity action plans? Collaboration, who's at the table, and who are we inviting to have these conversations? And again, back to it's multiple different areas, not a specific, though it did come through Indigenous. And finally, the last one was on equity scan. and the restarting of Equity Scan, and specific to Indigenous education. That was very important for our Indigenous education department to clarify that Equity Scan in this case is about Indigenous education.
And just for reference, I believe that's page 236 of the package. And thank you very much, Deputy Superintendent. That was nice and clear. Any other questions or observations or anything outstanding from the responses received so far? Okay, seeing none, I'll be looking for a mover. That's Trustee Kwan. Seconder, Trustee Mawobi. Thank you for jumping back into view at that point. It was critical. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Sorry, just scrolling. And our last motion today, that the Board of Education School District 61 approve the schedules as required by the Financial Information Act. Since I read it once already, I won't do that again. Any questions or observations about this? I've always found the statement of financial information really short on context, but always interesting in terms of tidbits. So it's worth a look at. However, in this case, no questions or comments from the looks of things. Last chance. May I have a mover for the approval? Trustee Mabobi. Seconder, Trustee Gagnon jumps in. Last questions. Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is unanimous. And that completes the report of the audit subcommittee for today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, folks. So we're moving on to our district leadership team reports at E1. We're starting with the superintendent's monthly report. Superintendent, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much. You'll see in the pack up on page 291, my report for September. It is for information. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I do want to, as I tend to do, is conclude with gratitude. So many thanks to all of the staff for a smooth startup in September, and also to Financial Services and Facility Services for all of their work as they work throughout the summer to both through the audit and also to prepare, clean, and do some repairs on our schools. So that report is there for information.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Winton. Does anyone have any questions? And again, this is open to not just board members, but if any of our partners around the table have any questions, please let us know. Yeah, President Humphries, Tracy, go ahead.
Honestly, I don't have questions. I just wanted to comment again, my appreciation for this report. I appreciate you highlighting the Accessible BC Act and the requirements and how the district is fulfilling and going to fulfill them, because it's a really important legislative piece that's moving forward across the province. And I think it's going to have a really positive impact on all students and all people working in schools and in the district. And I did want to put my plug in for, I really would like, as much as the Accessible BC Act requires, you know, they have some parameters around membership. They don't restrict some things, and I'd like to encourage student membership on that committee. I think it's really important to have like direct lived experience in this. And I also wanted to thank you very much for talking about safe and inclusive schools, and you know, for everyone, for referencing, you know, the challenging things that have been happening around the SOGI 123 program, and just, really appreciate everyone in the district affirming, their commitment to keeping all kids and, again, staff and families safe. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Trustee Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. My question has to do with the accessibility working group as well. And I believe that we have a presentation coming up in a month or two on this topic, but I was just wondering if we have a sense of how this working group is going to be providing information up to the board. It's a bit of an anomaly in terms of a working group that's being directed as opposed to being an ad hoc committee. So we don't necessarily have guidance around this one, but I do think it's such a critical issue, and it will be impacting so many of the other initiatives that we're working on, everywhere from facilities to climate action to enhancing student learning. And I just really want to make sure that it is plugged in and that we're aware of the input that we're receiving from it as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Painter. Superintendent Whitten, did you want to explain the reporting structures or who the committee will be reporting through? I assume the standing committees and then to the board, but correct me if I'm wrong.
No, yes, I think you are correct. We would be working through probably ed policy as this is beginning, and we have district principal Sean McCartney, who's working on this. First of all, to work through the expression of interest and gather for the first working group meeting. But yes, I would anticipate that you would have regular updates through ed policy.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. Any other questions in relation to the superintendent's monthly report? Okay, hearing none, we have a recommended motion that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, receive the superintendent's report as presented. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Mabobi, and a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Bayo. Any discussion? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. All right, so we're moving on to E1B. This is the Enhancing Student Learning Annual Report for 2023-2024. We do have a recommended motion, but I first want to open up the floor. I'm wondering who will be presenting the report. Superintendent Whitten, who should I turn the floor over to?
So what we had intended to do was just point out a few of the updates. You'll notice that this is the completed Enhancing Student Learning Report. We've received feedback, and the feedback has been included in this final report. Deputy Superintendent Caldwell can answer questions, but again, the information and feedback we received was, where possible, placed into the report.
Thank you, Superintendent. Is there any amendments to the report that you want to highlight in particular, or that the Deputy Superintendent wants to highlight? Maybe if you wouldn't mind just sort of summarizing what's been added.
Through the chair, we were able to incorporate several concerns or questions that were brought forward, particularly from President Humphreys, and I hope she's had a chance to take a look at it to see that those pieces were added there. We did add a section on at the very beginning when we introduced the context of the district with respect to Trustee McNally's request to highlight the programming that occurs at Victor School, Arbutus School, and Reynolds Secondary School as well. So there were several pieces we added and several comments made by President Humphreys that we will take forward as we develop next year's ESLER report.
Thank you very much. That's super helpful. I appreciate you going over that for us. All right, folks, I want to open up the floor just to any questions or discussion that we want to have around this before I get trustees involved in voting and all that good stuff. So Any questions or comments, first of all, from our partners around the table tonight? Yeah, President Humphreys, go ahead.
I really, I did have a chance to skim through it, and I'll be honest, I haven't read word for word, but I really appreciated seeing our comments incorporated, because it's just a recognition that there are some significant gaps for students with disabilities, and they're not being seen. I appreciate also, like, I know that some of my comments can't necessarily be incorporated. It was more about like, how can we in future look at data and different kinds of data? And I'm happy to hear that you hear that, and that's something to carry forward as a conversation. And I see it, linking into that Accessible BC Act work as well. So I think, there's a really good opportunity here to do some good work, and but I'm just happy to see the recognition that, there's a whole group of students that needs more support and work as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to open the floor then to trustees. I'm first going to read the recommended motion, which is that the Board of Education of SD61 Greater Victoria approve the Enhancing Student Learning Annual Report for 2023-2024 as presented. Just a reminder, as Deputy Superintendent Caldwell walked us through, this is the amended report and the report that will be submitted to the ministry subject to board approval. Yeah, so I want to open the floor up to, first of all, ask for a mover. Thank you, Trustee Gagnon, and a seconder. Trustee Kwan, thank you. All right, trustees, any discussion? All right, hearing none, I just have one comment I want to make. I just want to say that, just to really acknowledge that we're getting more sophisticated and more confident in our approach around this. This is now, I think, our third attempt at this, and I'm looking forward to the year ahead. In particular, looking at budget and how we can align budget to the commitments in this document. So yeah, just looking forward to the year ahead, to taking the commitments and then actioning them through some of the steps like our budget process this year and aligning resources. Does anyone else have any comments or anything else they would like to say before I call the question? All right, all those in favor with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. All right, so we're moving on to the 2023-2024 school plans at E1C. I'm wondering if wanted to turn the floor over initially to the superintendent, just to present sort of the work that's gone on around school plans this year, and then I'll open the floor up for some discussion. Superintendent Whitten.
Thank you, Chair Duncan. Yes, we have worked through the last year and a half on school plans and conversations at school levels and with principals and vice principals. We've taken time to look at data that we have and aligned questions to the strategic plan. So schools will continue. This is what we consider a living document. Schools will continue to have these conversations, and we will, at principal and vice principal meetings, continue to explore questions, be curious about students within the buildings and how best to serve them. And again, another alignment tool where we would be looking at how do we as a district and how do we all through budget processes support the work that's going on in schools. So as per the School Act, we have these school plans and the link was available. Work was in alignment with the strategic plan, and we will continue to have the conversations. And in the memo, just give you some examples of the discussions that we had, and then those discussions that are also occurring in schools with staff and with parents and students.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. Appreciate that. Yeah, so exciting that we're getting to the point now where we're bringing these things forward to the board. It's super important opportunity for us to show that alignment and to take some time in the school communities to really think about actioning some of the priorities, both in the strategic plan and in the ESL and so on, at the school-based level. So be interested to hear from partners, maybe some of whom have participated in the process over the last year and a half. But yeah, just want to open the floor up to partners who might have comments regarding school plans. Yeah, President Humphreys, go ahead.
I try not to comment on everything, but I'll be honest. I was excited about the idea of aligning the school plans and kind of trying to bring that all together. But I have to say that I didn't participate in that at my child's school this year. And I am going to reach out to PACS to find out, how much they've delved into that with their school admin, because I'm very interested to see, how their input may have been taken into it. And maybe I can bring some feedback around that.
That would be appreciated. Thanks, President Humphreys. Superintendent, did you have any comments you can make just in terms of the process for bringing these school plans together? I mean, I want to acknowledge all the work that, this is something that's required by the School Act, and it is a significant amount of work to make sure that we're in alignment with that. But I wondered if you wanted to speak to the process this year and what your plans are in the coming school year around process for this.
Yeah, as we continue this conversation, again, with principals and vice principals, we really are looking at the other partners and rights holders and groups that we need to connect with. And so I think this is, again, as I say, this is different in each school. So there isn't one way that will work. We have PAC meetings that we can bring this forward. These plans should be made available on websites and discussions should be happening. But I really do think it's contextual to the school level as to what works best for them to have the conversations. And included in that is what works best to have students involved in the conversations. So we have looked at process over the last year versus product. So ensuring that we are having more collaborative conversations. And I still think we have work to do in that area, but it is a question we ask and have conversations with principals and vice principals about how they intend to bring these conversations to parents and to students and to staff. So again, it's being more curious with them about where they see this fitting within their school.
Thank you, Superintendent Winton. Trustee Painter, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. When I was going through these plans, one of the things that struck me is that it just, well, not just how diverse the thoughts are, but and great objectives. But I'm really curious about what's at the end. All this work is going to be going forward. Is there a plan as part of the process to have some sort of a what we learned or what our results are stage of these, so that leading into our next year that schools are building upon the experiences and the successes or the challenges that they've had, so that we can hopefully move towards forward in a more productive manner.
Thank you, Trustee Painter. Superintendent?
Yes, so as I mentioned, this is an iterative process, and schools, principals, vice principals, and staff look at this both with the data that they have as well as the street level information and evidence, and always looking as a continuous improvement loop. So we will structure meetings with principals and vice principals around what have you learned, what have you seen, what has worked, what hasn't, and continue to evolve this as the year goes on. So again, this is starting, and it's taken a while to get to this point. We recognize that, but it will be continuous, and it will circle back around to having these conversations as the year progresses, because what we don't want is to put these on a website and then lose sight of them and come back to them in July and wonder how we did. So this is a conversation that is ongoing, and again, one that is reflective, and we make revisions along the way.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any other questions or comments folks would like to make? Yeah, Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this was my favorite part of reading the pack up. It was really neat to see, you know, what each school has planned. It's exciting. And the fact that now, you know, we can take something like this and align it, you know, to our strategic plan, to our budget process, you know, and really build as a school district is really exciting. And so, you know, like I said, this was just a really great part of the pack up that really kind of, you know, it brings everything together, and you know, you can see it kind of all coming together. And I love that it's going to be a continual process, and we'll see this build and grow as we go. And, you know, and the fact that, you know, it'll be on the websites, and, you know, our packs will have visibility into it, and, you know, be able to comment on it. And, you know, I think we can only get better from here, which is great. And it's a great start. So thank you for all of the work that's gone into it.
Trustee Kwan. Okay, so we have a recommended motion, folks, that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria approve the 2023-2024 school plans as presented. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Kwan. A seconder, Trustee Mbobi. Trustees, any further discussion, comments that we want to have? Recognizing this is the first year that we're doing this, and so it is a work in progress, and that there will be further development and attempts to include others in the process moving forward. All right, hearing no other comments, I am going to call the question. All those in favor with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you, trustees. All right, so we have now reached the trustee questions portion of our agenda. So I'm going to open the floor to trustees who have questions. Any questions, folks? All right, hearing none. We are now at 8E2, our Secretary Treasurer's report. Secretary Treasurer, would you like to highlight or present anything from your monthly reports?
Nothing really to highlight there, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Sounds good. Again, I'm opening it up to not just trustees, but partners around the table who might have questions. And then we have a recommended motion. All right, would someone like to then move the recommended motion that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria receive the Secretary Treasurer's report as presented? May I have a mover? Yep, Trustee Mbobi, and a seconder, Trustee Bio. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thanks again, trustees. So we are now at B, and this is the 2023-2024 annual 5-year capital plan in relation to the school infrastructure program. Now, this is a board of bylaws, so we will get into 2, if not 3 readings this evening. So bear with me, you're going to hear a lot from me, so I apologize in advance. But before we do, Secretary Treasurer, is there anything you want to highlight or explain in relation to the bylaw before we get started?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Really just want to highlight that this letter has come as a result of a submission that we made at the end of June. We requested $305,000 of funding from the ministry for the food infrastructure program, and we were funded for $170,000 of that. So we will be prioritizing the items that we had on our list to spend that $170,000 once the board approves the bylaw.
Very good, thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments in relation to that before I get into the readings? Yeah, Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Just a quick confirmation that that's the only change to the plan, and that everything else is, yeah, okay, great.
Any other questions before I get into the bylaw readings? Okay, all right, so we're going to do the first reading. So again, bear with me. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, approve capital bylaw number 2023-24, CPS SD6102, capital plan 2023-24, whereas in accordance with section 142 of the School Act, the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, hereinafter called the board, has submitted a capital plan to the Minister of Education, hereinafter called the Minister, and the Minister has approved the capital plan or has approved a capital plan with modifications. Now, therefore, in accordance with section 143 of the School Act, the board has prepared this capital bylaw and agrees to do the following. A, authorize the Secretary Treasurer to execute a capital project funding agreements related to the capital projects contemplated by the capital plan or the capital plan with modifications. B, upon ministerial approval to proceed, commence the capital projects and proceed diligently and use its best efforts to complete each capital project substantially as directed by the Minister. C, observe and comply with any order, regulation, or policy of the Minister as may be applicable to the board or the capital projects. And D, maintain proper books of accounts and other information and documents with respect to the affairs of the capital projects as may be prescribed by the Minister. Now, therefore, the board enacts as follows. 1, the capital bylaw of the board for the 2023-24 capital plan as approved by the Minister to include the supported capital projects specified in the letter addressed to the Secretary Treasurer and Superintendent dated September 15th, 2023 is hereby adopted. 2, the capital bylaw may be cited as School District number 61, Greater Victoria, capital bylaw number 2023-24 CPS SD61-02, read a first time this 25th day of September 2023. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Mabovi, seconded by Trustee Bayo. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor. This is our first reading, folks, with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. All right, thank you, folks. I'm going to launch right into second reading, so bear with me. Just need to go right back up. Haven't memorized it yet, maybe by the third reading. Okay, that the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, approve capital bylaw number 2023-24 CPS SD61-02, capital plan 2023-24. Whereas in accordance with section 142 of the School Act, the Board of Education of School District number 61, Greater Victoria, hereinafter called the board, has submitted a capital plan to the Minister of Education, hereinafter called the Minister, and the Minister has approved the capital plan or has approved a capital plan with modifications. Now, therefore, in accordance with section 143 of the School Act, the board has prepared the capital bylaw and agrees to do the following. A, authorize the Secretary Treasurer to execute a capital project funding agreements related to the capital projects contemplated by the capital plan or the capital plan with modifications. B, upon ministerial approval to proceed to commence the capital projects and proceed diligently and use its best efforts to complete each capital project substantially as directed by the Minister. C, observe and comply with any order, regulation, or policy of the Minister as may be applicable to the board or the capital projects. And D, maintain proper books of accounts and other information and documents with respect to the affairs of the capital projects as may be prescribed by the Minister. Now, therefore, the board enacts as follows. 1, the capital bylaw of the board for the 2023-24 capital plan as approved by the Minister to include the supported capital projects specified in the letter addressed to the Secretary Treasurer and Superintendent dated September 15th, 2023 is hereby adopted. 2, the capital bylaw may be cited as School District number 61, Greater Victoria, capital bylaw number 2023-24 CPS SD61-02, read a second time this 25th day of September 2023. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Gagnon, and seconded by Trustee Bayo. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of second reading the bylaw. And that is unanimous. Thanks again, trustees. So just a procedural note, in order to pass the bylaw or to do a third reading tonight, we would need to have the unanimous agreement of all trustees present. So I'm going to read a motion that is as follows, and then look to get a seconder or a mover and a seconder. So that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria agree to give all three readings of the School District number 61 Greater Victoria capital bylaw number 2023-24-CPS SD61-02 at the September 25th, 2023 board meeting. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Mabobi, seconded by Trustee Gagnon. Any discussion? All right, so all those in favor of moving all third reading. And that is unanimous. All right, so we do have the consent of the board to read the bylaw for a third time this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. The Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria approve capital bylaw number 2023-24-CPS SD61-02 capital plan 2023-24. Whereas in accordance with section 142 of the School Act, the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria, hereinafter called the board, has submitted a capital plan to the Minister of Education, hereinafter called the Minister, and the Minister has approved the capital plan or has approved a capital plan with modifications. Now, therefore, in accordance with section 143 of the School Act, the board has prepared this capital bylaw and agrees to do the following. A, authorize the Secretary Treasurer to execute a capital project funding agreements related to the capital projects contemplated by the capital plan or the capital plan with modifications. B, upon ministerial approval to proceed, commence the capital projects and proceed diligently and use its best efforts to complete each capital project substantially as directed by the Minister. C, observe and comply with any order, regulation, or policy of the Minister as may be applicable to the board or the capital projects. And D, maintain proper books of accounts and other information and documents with respect to the affairs of the capital projects as may be prescribed by the Minister. Now, therefore, the board enacts as follows. 1, capital bylaw of the board for the 2023-24 capital plan as approved by the Minister to include the supported capital projects specified in the letter addressed to the Secretary Treasurer and Superintendents dated September 15th, 2023 is hereby adopted. 2, the capital bylaw may be cited as School District number 61 Greater Victoria capital bylaw number 2023-24-CPS SD61-02 read a third time this 25th day of September 2023 and finally passed and adopted the 25th day of September 2023. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Kwan, seconded by Trustee Gagnon. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor for third reading? And that is unanimous. All right, thanks again, folks. Much appreciated. All right, so the next item on our agenda here this evening is C. So this is the 2024-2025 annual 5-year capital plan school infrastructure program. We do have a recommended motion, but I'm going to pause here and just look to staff who may want to present this and then or maybe highlight something from the memo.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to explain that of the 305,000 that we requested, we just went through the bylaw for the 170,000 that we were funded for. We have another opportunity to request the remaining 135,000. It will go under the 2024-2025 capital plan. So it won't be approved until the spring, along with the other items that we had approved in June. So this would just be for the remaining items that were unfunded.
Perfect, thank you. We had a modified approval and we're just seeking the additional items that we weren't funded for this year. All right, folks, so we have a recommended motion that the Board of Education of School District number 61 Greater Victoria approve the proposed 5-year capital plan school food infrastructure program for 2024-25 as provided on the 5-year capital plan summary for 2024-2025. May I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Gagnon, and a seconder. Thank you, Trustee Mobobi. Any discussion? Yes, Trustee Kwan, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question about whether adding something to the 2024-2025 capital plan will does it put you? I just wondered what happens to the already existing requests on the list, and whether you know, if we're asking for additional, whether that puts anything else in jeopardy.
Thank you, Trustee Kwan. Secretary Treasurer.
Through the chair, it does get added on to the minor capital, but because it's in its own category, the school food infrastructure program, it shouldn't impact anything else that we've requested.
Thank you very much. Trustee Gagnon, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Just catching something in the wording here is that this 135,000 is for 3 sites, and the initial ask was for 7. So just clarifying that the funding that we got is going towards 4 sites this year, and then this additional request is for the final 3 of those 7.
Thank you, Trustee Gagnon. Secretary Treasurer.
Our original request was actually for 10 sites. So we got 7, and now we're asking for the remaining 3.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Trustee Gagnon. Any other questions, comments before I call the question? All right, hearing none. All those in favor with a show of hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, so we are on the last item, D, which is the 2024-2025 budget development process. Secretary Treasurer, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is really just an update. We did pull back into this memo as a reminder of what the feedback was from our final Budget Advisory Committee meeting in May. And these are draft minutes, and they were included in the June agenda package, but just also included a summary in there. But I would recommend, if you want to see all the comments, to read through the draft minutes. And really just to advise everyone that we could have put forward a plan with meetings and dates at this meeting, but felt that it would make the best sense for senior leadership and the board to meet to talk about the feedback that we received from last year and how we would like to move forward with the process this year, including how to incorporate the important work of the Budget Advisory Committee. And so really just to say that there will be more information coming on this probably next month.
Perfect. Thank you, Secretary Treasurer. Appreciate the updates and look forward to that work. Any questions for the Secretary Treasurer in relation to this item? Okay, so there's no recommended motion. This is for information only, so just stay tuned. There will be more to come. Okay, so folks, I believe we now reached the point in our evening where we are looking to see if we have any questions. Question period. So just bear with me a second and turn to staff to let me know. I know you're very kindly monitoring the inbox to see if there is anything that's come through.
Yeah, just one question so far has come through.
Okay. Okay. Bear with me as I assume you've emailed me. Just bear with me a second, sorry. Okay. Oh yeah, I see it. Okay, so the question is around why the board is meeting online rather than in person. So yeah, I can kick kick us off, and then I'll turn to staff to see if there's anything else that they would like to add. So we did have sort of an informal discussion about this, and we decided to continue to meet online for a few reasons. One, in order to well, really, it's easier for folks to get to online meetings, frankly, and it's become more accessible for the public to be able to attend online. But we also have some significant issues that we're going to be costly to remedy around our boardroom. So we've got some audio and video upgrades that would need to be made to our boardroom facilities so that folks could hear who's speaking and also see who's speaking properly. Right now, the way that it's set up, unless we make some investments in upgrading the boardroom, it isn't clear when trustees are speaking, like who's speaking, what they've said. There's some real downsides of having meetings in the boardroom. So the hope eventually will be to use our boardroom again, but until then, we're going to continue with online meetings. I'm going to turn to the superintendent. Was there anything else that you would like to add in response to that question?
No, well, other than the fact that we continue to explore lower cost, inexpensive solutions so that we can get everybody back in person and meet again.
Thanks, Superintendent. I guess the only other thing I would add, because I think it's a good conversation for us to be having, is there's also the possibility of moving to hybrid meetings. So I think during the pandemic, meeting online or having an online option, a lot of folks have really appreciated, because it means that they don't need to look for childcare for their kids. They can, attend a board meeting or a standing committee meeting from home. So there's a lot of advantages in terms of accessibility for some folks. That said, I know many folks are keen to get back in person. So I think hopefully we'll be looking at some potential hybrid options in future as well. So thank you for the question. Now that moves us to, I just double checking there weren't any other questions. There was just one. Just one. Okay, great.
Yeah, just the one.
Perfect. So we're at G. This is the public disclosure of in-camera items. We have one disclosure under G1. This is just a record of an in-camera meeting of the board from June 19th. That's there for your information. I don't believe we have any new business or notice of motions, but I will look to my colleagues. Any notice of motions to present tonight? Okay, hearing none, we are at adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn? Mover, Trustee Mabobi, seconded by Trustee Gagnon. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you, folks, for your time tonight. Good night.